What's poppin'? How's everybody doing? Did you miss me? One Piece chapter 961 is out early, and today I felt like it was best to make a review like I normally do when a chapter comes out. So this is something that I'm gonna say here right now early. For the One Piece chapters going forward, while this flashback is going on, I will not be rating the chapters because I don't think it's just or it's fair to do so. The whole purpose of what Oda is doing here doesn't reflect exactly what's going on necessarily in the story. What I mean is Oda is trying to flesh out Oden. He's trying to give us more context and more backstory to relate it back to Wano, but again, it is veering off from the actual storyline. So for me to rate this backstory and compare it to, I don't know, like the Reverie and going into the fight with Orochi and Kaido, I don't think it's a fair thing to do. So personally, I'm not going to rate these chapters. I'm going to take these chapters for what it's worth. I'm sure when I do my live reactions on my other channel, B.D.A, I will do so, but I guess for my review, it's not more so rating the chapters, but actually tying it back into exactly what's going on real time. So in the chapter, for instance, well, I guess before I get to the chapter, let's talk about the cover page and the cover story, because we're still dealing with Capone and him trying to find Lola and Chiffon. Here we see Vito and Gotti, and at this point we have people who are hurt and they're trying to figure out exactly what happened to them. The thing is though, with these people, they have the mark or lipstick on them that looks like Lola or Chiffon, so we're trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And again, this cover story has been fine, nothing spectacular. I guess the best thing for me had been last chapter when we saw the lines from the birdcage, and that has something to do with the fact that Doflamingo is my favorite character, but regardless, a decent cover story so far. But let's get to One Piece chapter 961. Last chapter we left off in which there was the mountain god who was coming down and was raging on the capital because of them having the white boar baby. The major thing that came from last chapter that everybody was talking about was Denjiro, and who the hell is Denjiro in real time? Now the speculation was that Denjiro could be Koshiro, Kyoshiro, Scopper Gaban, Kondariana. I'm leaning towards Kondariana. But in this chapter, we got some more in regards to Denjiro's personality, and he is a huge fanboy of Oden. I compared it to him being Kobe of the story. So essentially, what Oda is trying to do here, he's replicating, and that's not an accurate representation of what Oda is doing. He's more so trying to give us an origin story in the same vein of Luffy. And again, I've said this numerous times, Oden is Luffy, but in a different era. And of course, it's a different storyline, different things that would happen to him, but he's the special character, the special person that has the power to draw people to him, an insane charisma that everyone just notices, and some people have to literally stop themselves from falling victim to. Denjiro is somebody who had already fallen victim to it, and he is a super fanboy. In the first page, you saw Denjiro, he was literally crying at the fact that Oden being so brilliant. Again, it's in the same vein of Kobe, but Kobe didn't initially look at Luffy that way, so again, it's different. And again, I'm not trying to force a parallel here. It's easier to bridge that gap if you understand like the character that I'm looking at and how I compare it to another character. So in this case, Denjiro is Oden's Kobe. However, it's different. So I like the nuance there, right? Where Kobe, he obviously looked up to Luffy and he admires Luffy, but he still wants to take down Luffy because his dreams and aspirations are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum of what Luffy's dreams are. With Denjiro, at this point, it seems like he's a fan of Oden and he's willing to follow Oden no matter what. The storyline with the boar and the mountain god, it's fine, I guess. It's pretty frivolous, it's pretty simple. It hasn't really gripped me because the whole intention of it was to get Kinemon and Denjiro to follow Oden, right? The purpose of it was to just build up Oden, and it also told an interesting story. What I mean is everything that's happening to Oden, or actually, you know what? I get to that point. But the White Boar story is basically giving us more backstory with Kinemon and Otsuru because she was obviously kidnapped. She was eaten by the White Boar, or the mountain god, because the White Boar was kidnapped by Kinemon and Kinemon was trying to sell the White Boar to pay off his debts. And again, one of the people he owed a debt to was Otsuru, so it all tied in, I guess. But it's a pretty typical storyline. We had Kinemon going at the boar. And again, you could also understand his feelings because Otsuru, they obviously had a relationship before what we see because they mentioned that in the last chapter. And I guess the title of this video is going to be Deepening the Bonds, because essentially Kinemon in this moment, he thought back to all his great moments with Otsuru. So now knowing that they're married, it all makes sense because he even said that he would rather not be alive than to be in a world without Otsuru. Or I guess to put in more context, if Otsuru dies because of him, he'd rather not be alive. He can't defeat the boar, so the person that does it Kozuki Oden. And it's interesting because Oden is a two-sword style user, but he says Oden two-sword style, which I'm not sure if this is a gag of Oden that he's super full of himself, but to name something Oden two-sword style, pretty pompous guy, but I love it. I mentioned before, or I hinted towards the fact that a lot of things that happen to Oden, they don't seem to be what they are. What I mean is, we know the situation with the white boar. Oden wasn't the one that brought it down from the mountain. He wasn't the one that was trying to capture it to pay off his debts, but he was the one who was willing to take the boar and draw the mother to it so that he can basically take that mountain god out. Essentially, the people, from their perspective, it looks like Oden was the one who always had the boar, and he was the one who caused the devastation. So for them, it's in line with the things Oden always does. And so with him and the boar, it definitely makes you think, because going back to chapter 960, when whomever this guy was given the breakdown to Sukiyaki, they mentioned how Oden, when he was age 2, was able to catch rabbits with his bare hands. He's roaming the red light district, wasting royal funds on frivolities. That story could be he was actually helping people at the red light district, and maybe he wasn't really engaged in those actions. Maybe there was a situation in which he had to get in a fight with a gambler because of something that happened. Him being banned by the Yakuza. Maybe they had kidnapped somebody he cared about. So for me, in all of these situations, I don't think Oden was intent on doing something bad. I just believe how it played out. It lent a negative connotation to his name. And for him, he didn't really care because he was trying to leave Wano anyway. And it happened as well, even after he cut down the boar and Kinemon was trying to apologize for everything that happened. He was saying it doesn't matter. I mean, at this point, they have a perception of me. I'm going to continue taking it. Even with Oden doing all of these quote unquote bad things, because I don't think he really did all those bad things that they think he did. It's just a perception thing. It's a reputational thing. So the story went out of its way to highlight that by 18, Oden had caused the mountain god incident. And again, he became a daimyo by 20. He's been disowned at this point. Disowned by his dad, Sukiyaki the shogun. So we're gonna have a 2-year span in which we have to justify Oden not only liberating Kuri, but getting back in the favor of Sukiyaki. Oden's charisma and, this plays into his conqueror's haki. Kinemon was crying at the fact that Oden was so impressive. Denjiro, we know he was crying. And at this point, he's gained the following of Kinemon and Denjiro. Kinemon not only for how impressive he was, but also for saving Osuru. Denjiro just because he's Kozuki Oden. It's funny because these other men, they wanted to follow Oden, but they had to suppress themselves and stop themselves from following such a brilliant man. But they were impressed that Kinemon and Denjiro could be so free and follow Oden. This goes back to just Luffy's mantra of being a free pirate and being a free man. I'm sure people feel that way about Luffy and the Straw Hats, in which they want to join the Straw Hats. They want to follow Luffy. And Luffy, he's gained so many followers now. I mean, that's essentially what the Grand Fleet is. So again, a lot of hints and parallels, not direct parallels, but just, different cool similarities between the two characters, and them being users of Conqueror's haki. That's their special power to draw people to them. Anyway, we see more of the past. We know this is an origin story, so seeing people that we know of, like in this instance, Shimotsuki Yasui. Yasui is dead, and we know Yasui. We saw some flashbacks in regards to his and Oden's relationship, as far as like him trying to mold Oden into the way of being the next shogun. But Oden, of course, he just walked to the beat of his own drum. He was not going to be that. He was not going to follow in the footsteps of Sukiyaki the way Sukiyaki wanted, or the way Yasui wanted. In the midst of meeting Yasui, we meet a creepy guy, this creepy young guy who was willing to drop himself in front of a puddle so that this guy, this servant of Yasui, or rather, he dropped himself in the puddle so that this guy, Oden, could walk over him. So then Oden's asking, who is this weirdo? And then now we see this weirdo was someone that was taken in by Lord Yasui, Urozomi Orochi. There's a few things about Orochi that has been revealed, right? As far as him trying to take Oden's lore, being a two-sword style user, and he was saying that he defeated Oden fair and square, which means that he didn't defeat Oden fair and square. Even in Orochi's design, if you go back and look at it, it seems like he's copying Sukiyaki. I'm not ready to say that he's on the level of Blackbeard or even Aizen, but I think Orochi is going to be a conspirer, someone that plotting and planned to take down the shogun because of a situation. We don't know that yet, but what we do know started as a servant of Yasui. And again, deepening the bonds, knowing that he had previous interactions with Oden as a servant, and Oden was already a brilliant man, knowing that he was the understudy or the servant of Yasui, who he killed. It's deepening the bonds and the relationships of everything that's transpiring in Wano, because now when you go back and look at that scene, it adds more context. It's a bit deeper because, again, I took you in when you were nobody. Me, Yasui. And now we see Orochi was willing to kill Yasui. Again, this is 20 years before the takeover. So everything that transpired, something had to have happened. I'm sure it could have been jealousy. Maybe Orochi was in love with Lady Toki. Regardless, it's getting more and more interesting. That's why I'm not going to rate these chapters, because they're deepening the bonds. They're trying to enhance the other chapters. So for instance, knowing what I know now, going back and reading that chapter with Orochi and Yasu is better, because now I know that they had a previous relationship. It wasn't just him trying to eradicate the uprising. He actually was taken in by Yasu. As a standalone, I won't rate it. But again, amazing for what it was intended to do, which is enhance Wano, right? That's the whole point of the backstory, to enhance how we feel about Oden, to make us feel what his scabbards feel about Oden. And again, we already have two, Denjiro and Kinemon. So we're on the journey with Oden to figure out exactly and how the hell the scabbards end up where they are now. Like, what happened? How was Oden defeated, being as brilliant and having the potential that Oda is trying to hint that he has? So leave your thoughts below, guys. What do you think about the chapter? What do you think about everything that transpired? I thought it was a really, really good chapter for what it was intended to do. I want to make that very clear. As a standalone, not knowing, like, say you just read this, right? And somehow you forgot everything that transpired in Wano so far with Orochi and Yasu. You're like, well, you know, it was fine, I guess. But when you know everything, the backstory, and using this to enhance those other chapters, I think it was a splendid job. The vibes of chapters like these in the last chapter is the beginning of a story. It was the beginning of something great, but you just know it was going to be something great, because Oden and what he's betrayed to be, he has no choice. Like, it seems like for his destiny, he was going to be great no matter what. Like, even with him seemingly getting in his own way, he still ended up being a great man. So let me know your thoughts on the chapter. How do you feel about Orochi? Do you think there was something major that happened? I mean, obviously there was something major that happened, I think, but what do you think happened to get Orochi to where he is now? What transpired? So again, leave your thoughts below, like the video if you did, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.